Leela stepped nervously into the small, cozy cafe, her worn leather purse clutched tightly in her hands. She had only $5 in her pocket, barely enough to get a meal. But she had promised her friend she would go on this blind date. Canceling now felt like admitting defeat. And Lila didn't want to let anyone down. The chilly evening air clung to her coat as she pushed open the door, stepping into the warmth that smelled of freshly baked bread and rich coffee. She paused for a moment, letting the aroma wash over her and calm her racing heart. Scanning the room, she tried to spot a familiar face, her eyes darting nervously from one table to another. The place was cozy but lively, filled with the soft hum of conversation and the clatter of cups on saucers. She walked to the counter, hoping to make sense of the menu without drawing too much attention to herself. Every dish she wanted seemed far beyond what her meager budget could cover. With a quiet sigh, she finally settled on a small cup of vegetable soup and a slice of bread. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. Taking her order to a corner table, she sat down, her fingers trembling slightly as she counted the coins in her purse to make sure she had enough to pay. She was so focused on her little meal that she didn't notice the man sitting at a table by the window. He was impossible to miss, even from a distance. Dark hair perfectly combed, a sharp tailored suit, and an air of quiet authority made him seem like he belonged in a completely different world than hers. And yet, his piercing blue eyes were fixed on her, watching with an intensity that made her feel seen in a way she rarely did. Leela felt a strange mix of embarrassment and curiosity. She looked down at her soup, hoping he wouldn't notice her small order or the careful way she counted her coins. And yet, she couldn't help glancing up at him from time to time, wondering why someone like him would even look her way. There was something different about him, something that wasn't just about wealth or power. It was the way he watched her, not judgmental, not prying, but with a quiet interest, almost as if he understood the weight she carried. Her nerves were fraying as she adjusted the scarf around her neck, wishing the ground would swallow her up. She barely noticed when her blind date arrived, a man who seemed preoccupied with his own reflection in the cafe's window. Feeling a pang of relief, she excused herself to the restroom, needing a moment alone to steady her thoughts. Across the room, the man in the suit remained, watching her leave. His eyes softened as he observed her small struggle, a hint of a smile touching his lips. Something about her vulnerability and quiet dignity tugged at him, though he didn't yet know why. Leela returned from the restroom, her cheeks flushed with a mix of embarrassment and nerves. She barely noticed her blind date, who was already scrolling on his phone, completely disengaged from her presence. She sat back down at the table, staring at her small cup of soup and slice of bread, feeling a pang of disappointment. She had hoped this evening might be different, maybe even exciting, but so far, it was nothing more than awkward silence and her own anxious thoughts. Across the room. The man in the tailored suit continued to watch her quietly. He noticed the careful way she balanced her meal on the table, the way she pushed the bread around her plate as if to make it last longer, and the hesitant glances she cast at the other diners. There was a delicate grace to her movements, a modesty that spoke of resilience and humility. He found himself strangely drawn to her, not just because she seemed out of place in a cafe full of hurried customers, but because there was something pure about her struggle that reminded him of his own past. He remembered the times he had worked long hours, trying to build his company from nothing, feeling the sting of setbacks and the pressure to succeed. He knew what it felt like to have little while the world expected much. And now, watching her, he felt a flicker of recognition, a silent connection across the distance between them. Without thinking, he motioned to the waiter and quietly arranged for her meal to be taken care of, leaving a small note on the table. When Leela returned to her seat after adjusting her scarf, she noticed the note resting next to her bowl. She picked it up with trembling hands and read the simple words, "Don't worry about the price. Enjoy your evening. A friend." Her eyes widened and her throat tightened. She looked around the cafe, hoping to see who had left it, but the man in the suit was already gone. Only the warmth of the gesture remained, filling her chest with a mix of gratitude and confusion. For the first time that evening, Leela felt a genuine smile spread across her face. Her blind date seemed insignificant compared to the unexpected kindness of a stranger who had noticed her struggle. She ate her meal slowly, savoring each bite, letting herself feel the comfort of knowing that someone, somewhere, had seen her and chosen to act without judgment. Even after she left the cafe that night, the image of the man's sharp blue eyes lingered in her mind. There was something about the way he had watched her, not with pity, but with understanding, that stayed with her long after the evening ended. It was a moment she would never forget. A quiet reminder that small acts of kindness could change the course of someone's night, or even their life. Weeks passed since that unforgettable evening at the cafe, and Lila couldn't shake the memory of the stranger who had quietly paid for her meal. She went about her daily routine, working long hours and managing her modest apartment. But the thought of his piercing blue eyes and the simple note he left lingered in the back of her mind. It was as if a small spark had been lit, one she didn't fully understand yet. She never told anyone about it, fearing they would dismiss it as a trivial moment. But for her, it had been extraordinary. One rainy evening, while attending a business seminar for work, Leela found herself seated in the back of a large conference room. The room buzzed with chatter, the sound of heels clicking on the floor, and the occasional tapping of keyboards. She tried to focus on the presentation, but her mind kept drifting. Then, just as the lights dimmed and the speaker stepped onto the stage, she saw him. The man from the cafe, taller than she remembered, exuding the same quiet authority, yet with a softer, almost approachable presence. He scanned the room, and when his eyes met hers, Lila felt her heart skip a beat. He smiled faintly, a knowing look in his gaze that made her pulse quicken. For a moment, time seemed to stretch, and the world outside the seminar room melted away. After the presentation, she lingered by the exit, unsure whether to approach him or let the moment pass. But before she could decide, he was walking toward her, his steps measured and confident. "Lila, isn't it?" he asked, his voice calm yet filled with warmth. Her breath caught in her throat. "I paid for your meal that night," he continued. "I wanted to make sure someone as hardworking as you didn't have to worry about the cost of dinner for a few minutes." Lila blinked, momentarily speechless. The memory came rushing back, the soup, the note, the gentle gesture that had touched her deeply. She felt a wave of gratitude mixed with disbelief. I didn't expect this," she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. He chuckled softly, the sound like a reassurance. "Neither did I, but sometimes life gives us small chances to see who really matters, and I think you matter." Lila felt warmth flood through her chest, a connection forming that went beyond words. In that brief exchange, she realized that the world could still hold moments of genuine kindness, of unexpected understanding, and perhaps even something more. From that night onward, Leela's life subtly shifted. Every interaction, every choice seemed a little brighter, a little more filled with hope, because she knew that somewhere out there, someone had truly seen her and cared. From that evening at the seminar, Lila and the CEO's lives began to intertwine in ways neither of them had anticipated. What started as a brief, almost accidental connection grew steadily through small gestures, shared conversations, and moments of laughter that felt rare and precious. They discovered a mutual respect, a bond rooted not in wealth or status, but in understanding and genuine care. They started meeting for coffee, sometimes in quiet cafes like the one where their story had begun, sometimes at parks or bookstores, savoring the simplicity of moments away from the pressures of their daily lives. He admired the way Lila approached life with quiet determination, never complaining despite the small struggles she faced. She, in turn, was drawn to his humility beneath the tailored suits and polished exterior, the way he listened, truly listened, and remembered even the smallest details about her life. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low over the city skyline, painting the streets in shades of gold and orange, they found themselves walking along a tree-lined path in the park. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of fallen leaves and distant rain. He stopped and turned to her, his eyes meeting hers with a depth that made her heart race. "I know our worlds are different," he said softly, "but I want to be part of yours. I want to share the small and big moments, the laughter and even the struggles." Leela felt a warmth spread through her chest. The hardships she had faced suddenly seemed lighter, as if the universe had conspired to bring this man into her life. "And I want to be part of yours," she replied, her voice steady, filled with the sincerity that had always guided her. It was more than a promise. It was a recognition of the bond they had quietly nurtured over weeks of small, meaningful interactions. From that day forward, their connection deepened. They shared dinners, long walks, and late-night talks, discovering joy in the everyday and comfort in each other's presence. Leela realized that sometimes life's smallest gestures, the simple act of paying for a meal, a kind word, a moment of attention, could create ripples that transformed everything. The cafe, once just a place where she had worried about a $5 meal, had become the starting point of something extraordinary. Together, they built a world where understanding, empathy, and quiet love mattered more than appearances or societal expectations. Leela's heart, once heavy with worry and uncertainty, now felt full and light, carrying a sense of hope she had never known. And in the warmth of his gaze, the quiet reassurance of his presence, she finally understood that life sometimes saves its most beautiful moments for those who least expect them. In the end, it was not wealth or chance that brought them together. It was kindness, respect, and the courage to notice and care for another person. And in that gentle, unexpected way, two lives that seemed worlds apart found each other and created something truly remarkable.